This video will cover moderate part 2 questions regarding the topic of derivatives of trigonometric functions. Here are the basic differentiation formulas for 6 trigonometric functions. Please remember that only functions starting with a c have a negative sign. From now, we will do trigonometric differentiation. If it is very difficult, it will be good to remember chain rules first. This is the first question. Y equals u cubed. So dy du equals 3u to the power of 2. U equals sine 2x. Then du dx equals, use the chain rule, cosine 2x times 2x prime equals cosine 2x times 2x prime is 2. The final answer is 2 cosine 2x. When x equals pi over 12, then u of pi over 12 equals sine 2 times pi over 12. We can rewrite as sine is 1 and 6, so pi over 6. So the triangle like this is 1, 2, square root of 3. Then this angle is pi over 6. Then sine pi over 6 is 1 over 2. Do you remember SOHCAHTOA? dy dx equals dy du times du dx equals dy du equals 3u squared times du dx equals 2 cosine 2x. So 6u squared cosine 2x dy dx when x equals pi over 12, u equals 1 over 2 equals 6 times u squared times cosine 2x, which is pi over 12, equals 6 times 1 over 4 times cosine pi over 6 is 2 and 3. So 3 over 2 times, use this one. Cosine pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. The final answer is 3 square root of 3 over 4. The y value when x equals pi, y of pi equals sine pi equals sine pi equals 0, then sine 0 equals 0. Therefore, pi, 0. That means the tangent line to the curve at pi, 0. Now shall we find the slope of the tangent line when x equals pi? Use the general power rule. Think of it as u equals sine x. Then y equals sine u. Then d dx sine u equals cosine u times u prime. So y prime equals cosine u times u prime. The inner function is sine x. Then cosine of sine x times sine x prime is cosine x. Then y prime over pi equals cosine of sine of pi times cosine pi equals cosine sine pi equals 0. Then cosine pi equals minus 1. Then cosine 0 equals 1 times minus 1, which is minus 1. So the slope equals minus 1. We use the point slope form to write an equation of the tangent line at pi, 0 equals y minus y1, which is 0, equals m, which is minus 1 times x minus x1. which is pi. So y equals minus x minus pi, or we can rewrite as y equals minus x plus pi. Number 3, find the y value when x equals pi over 9. Y equals sine cubed 3x, then we can rewrite as y equals sine 3x to the power of 3. Then y over pi over 9 equals sine 3 times pi over 9 to the power of 3, which is sine pi over 3 cubed. Then pi over 3 is, this is the square root of 3 part, 2 and 1 part. Then use the SOHCAHTOA. Sine of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2 cubed, which is 3 square root of 3 over 8. The point is pi over 9, 3 square root of 3 over 8. Y equals sine 3x cubed. Now think of it as sine 3x equals u, then y equals u cubed, then y prime equals 3u squared times u prime. The inner function is sine 3x, sine 3x equals 3 times sine squared 3x times sine 3x prime. Now think of it as u equals 3x, then cosine 3x times 3x prime, then 3 times sine squared 3x cosine 3x times 3x prime equals 3. So 9 sine squared 3x times cosine 3x. Y prime of pi over 9 equals 9 times sine pi over 3 squared times cosine pi over 3. Use the triangle. 2 square root of 3 and 1. 9 times sine pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2 squared times cosine pi over 3 is 1 over 2. So 9 times 3 over 4 times 1 over 2, which is 27 over 8. Then the slope equals minus 8 over 27. The slope of the normal line at pi over 9, 3 square root of 3 over 8 is the negative reciprocal of 27 over 8. So we can find this one. Use the point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Final answer is y minus 3 square root of 3 over 8 equals minus 8 over 27 times x minus pi over 9. This is the next question. When you compare these two limits, you can see f of x equals tangent x and a equals pi over 4. Then the question is f prime of pi over 4. So we have to find f prime of x first equals secant squared x, then secant squared pi over 4 equals, use the triangle, 1, 1 square root of 2, then cosine pi over 4 equals 1 over square root of 2, then secant pi over 4 is reciprocal, which is square root of 2 over 1, then squared, which is 2. That is the answer. Or We can rewrite as d dx of tangent x when x equals pi over 4, then tangent x prime equals secant squared x when x equals pi over 4, then secant pi over 4 squared equals square root of 1 squared, which is 2. Number 5, please remember this one. We can rewrite as limit as h approaches 0 sine pi plus h minus 0 over h, then limit as h approaches 0 sine pi plus h minus, use sine, then sine pi over h equals, that means d dx of sine x when x equals pi, so sine x prime equals cosine x when x equals pi, then cosine pi, which is minus 1, or think of it as f of x equals sine x and a equals pi, then f prime of x equals cosine x, then f prime of pi equals cosine pi, which is minus 1. This is an equivalent way to the definition of the derivative. F prime of a equals limit as x approaches a, then f of x minus f of a over x minus a. When you compare these two limits, you can see f of x equals sine x, then f of a equals 0.5. That means a equals pi over 6, because sine pi over 6 is 0.5. You can use the triangle 1, 2, square root of 3. Then 0.5 is 1 over 2. Then back to the original, we can rewrite as d dx of sine x when x equals pi over 6. Then sine x prime equals cosine x when x equals pi over 6. Then cosine pi over 6. Use the SOHCAHTOA. The answer is square root of 3 over 2. Number 7. When you compare these two limits, you can see f of x equals cosecant square x. We can rewrite as cosecant x squared, and a equals pi over 4. F prime of x equals, use the general power rule. Think of it as cosecant x equals u, then u squared prime equals 2u times u prime. The inner function is cosecant x, then 2 cosecant x times cosecant x prime equals minus cosecant x cotangent x, so minus 2 cosecant squared x times cotangent x. Then f prime of pi over 4 equals minus 2 times cosecant pi over 4 squared times cotangent pi over 4. Use the triangle 1, 1 square root of 2 equals minus 2 times, use the SOHCAHTOA, square root of 2 squared times 1. So minus 2 times 2 times 1, which is minus 4, or d dx cosecant squared x when x equals pi over 4, then cosecant squared x prime equals 2u times u prime when x equals pi over 4. The inner function is cosecant x, but we already know the answer, so use it. Minus 2 cosecant squared x times cotangent x when x equals pi over 4, then we can rewrite as minus 2 cosecant pi over 4 squared times cotangent pi over 4. We already have answer, minus 4 here. Number 8, as you know, limit as h approaches 0, f of a plus h minus f of a over h equals f prime over a. So this limit means f prime of pi. F of x equals, we can rewrite as cosine minus x over 2 squared plus x cubed. F prime of x equals, think of it as u equals cosine minus x over 2, then 2u times u prime. The inner function is cosine minus x over 2, cosine minus x over 2 plus, then x cubed prime equals 3x squared equals 2 cosine minus x over 2 times, now think of it as u equals minus x over 2, so cosine u prime equals minus sine u times u prime, which is the inner function is minus x over 2 minus x over 2, then plus 3x squared equals minus 2, then cosine minus x over 2 times sine minus x over 2 times minus x over 2 prime equals minus 1 over 2 plus 3x squared equals, cancelled these two numbers, then cosine minus x over 2 times sine minus x over 2 plus 3x squared, then f prime of pi equals cosine minus pi over 2 times sine minus pi over 2 plus 3 times pi squared equals 0 times minus 1 plus 3 pi squared. The final answer is 3 pi squared. This is the last one. Think of it as u equals sine squared 3x. If y equals sine u, then d dx of sine u equals cosine u times u prime. So y prime equals cosine u times u prime. The inner function is sine squared 3x, sine squared 3x. So cosine sine squared 3x times, we can rewrite as sine 3x squared, then prime, then cosine sine squared 3x times, now u equals sine 3x, so that means u squared prime like that, then 2u times u prime, then u is sine 3x. equals 2 cosine sine squared 3x times sine 3x times, now u equals 3x, so sine 3x means sine u prime equals cosine u times u prime, the inner function is 3x, equals 2 cosine sine squared 3x times sine 3x cosine 3x times 3x prime equals 3. The final answer is 6 cosine sine squared 3x times sine 3x cosine 3x, or just 3 times 2 sine 3x cosine 3x means sine 6x, then cosine sine squared 3x. I hope this video has been helpful. The previous lesson is linked in the description bar below. If you have any questions, leave them in a comment. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more.